Hello! I hope that you and your voice are doing really well. If we haven't met before, I am Kim from thatsweetraw.com, and today we're going to be asking the question, could it be beneficial for you to break up with the idea of vocal registers? I know, shocking. If using the terms chest voice, mixed voice, head voice works for you, if you know exactly how to make those happen, if you are not having issues with it being too heavy and getting strain, or actually not getting chord closure and it being a little bit weak and too heady, then this is not for you. If you are totally fine without this video, go for it. But if those challenges do sound familiar, please stick with me. If you find that language is actually a bit too vague or confusing, stick with me. So, when we speak about vocal registers, so you've got chest voice, head voice, mixed voice, it is trying to categorize what is happening physiologically in your body and orally, what you hear. And it's really trying to make something that is gray, or actually, I spoke about this in my last video about mixed voice, which I will link here as well. It's more of a spectrum of color. And when we put it into these boxes, it makes it seem like it's quite black and white. So registers actually encompass a whole lot of things. The space that it resonates in. So that's why we call it the chest voice and the head voice, because of the space that we feel that resonance in. The pitch, so how low and high the notes are, what the vocal cords are doing, so how thin and stretched they are versus short and thick, and the timbre, or the quality of the sound. So the problem with then trying to distill this, all of that, into two categories, because we used to just speak of chest voice and head voice, is that singers then felt like they had to be clearly in one gear or the other. And I remember this when I was much younger, and we didn't speak at all about how to do something about this break. And part of the reason why it was so confusing to me is that what I knew, or what I understood about chest voice and head voice, felt like two completely different worlds. And I think that actually amplified my vocal break rather than me finding more organic ways of voicing on different notes. And it wasn't until I learned about the concept of mixed voice, and this was when I started doing more contemporary training, and it was all very new in the field at that point, that I had heard about anything that kind of bridged that gap. But then the problem again, and I mentioned this in that last video about mixed voice in my mind was one quality, and either I got it right or I didn't. When in reality, mixed voice is again this spectrum of pitches and qualities and colors. And when we understand that, then it's not just right or wrong. We don't have this binary, we have choice. And that's what I'm interested in, is what sound do you want to create? What do you have in your head and your heart? And what is the easiest way that we can help you express that safely and efficiently without all of this confusing jargon, right, that can get in the way? So then in my teaching, I started talking about mixed voice in regards to head dominant mix and chest dominant mix, to try to take it away from this one color when I knew that it was on this spectrum. And so then it wasn't one sound or one sensation, there was a spectrum that could lean in either direction. So it was either leaning towards the qualities and the experience that we have of chest voice quality, or head voice quality, chest dominant, head dominant. So at best, registers then have 4 buckets: chest voice, chest dominant mix, head dominant mix, and head voice. And you might have heard of other terms. People use M1 and M2, but really it's 2, 3, or 4 buckets or categories. But these categories, what I found with my students, were not helping singers actually get the sound that they wanted. So often they could listen and identify what the singer was doing and try to put it in one of those buckets, which can be initially helpful, but it didn't help with the production of it, with the creating of it themselves. And if this is sounding like ringing bells to you, if it's sounding familiar to you, you are so not alone. And that's why I want to talk about it in a different way. What if we don't talk about registers at all? So recently, with my clients, I've been getting them to scrap the idea of registers altogether, to break up with this very finite definition of sound, and instead focusing on expression. So what is the emotion that is you're wanting to bring to life because of the lyrics or because of the melody or because of the context? And let that drive and color the sound. And that cracks so many more possibilities open, and you don't have these tiny little buckets that are right and wrong that you're trying to get, your voice into, to slot into, but you don't really know the pathway of getting there. So I'm actually going to go into this in more detail in a live class that I'm hosting this weekend, which is called Technique Got Your Tongue? ? And what I'm trying to do in that class is tackle not only registration and chord closure, what we're talking about here, but a whole range of different parts of vocal technique that have had old ways of describing them and very complicated jargon that can kind of disconnect us from the human expression of it. So it makes it really intellectual and can disconnect us from our bodies, or it's too vague and we can't quite figure out how to make it happen. I want to talk about ways that we can actually get there sort of through a trap door, because my experience was just banging on the same door when someone would say, add more support, and I would be like, I thought that I was, but really I was just tensing my abs because that's how I understood what support should feel like in my body, which was completely the wrong relationship. It was much more of a relationship than I realized. I thought that it was this one movement. So I want to just take all of that language that might not make sense to you in your body in a way that you can put into action and translate it. So I'm going to be the Google Translator really this weekend. So I will put the link below if you would love to grab a ticket to that. If you can't make it live, there will be a recording. So if you're watching this past the date, you can also get the recording. But I will go into more detail about this and a bunch of other topics. I'm also available to answer questions in that class. And I can't wait because, as I said, my passion is about helping you understand that it's not about your skill, it's not about your talent, it's not about your intellect, it's about the language that it is being translated to you in. And that is the role of the teacher, is to help you understand how to make it happen, how to make what's in your head and your heart come out of your mouth as safely and efficiently and as joyfully as possible, rather than getting stuck up in your head and criticizing and analyzing it until, you just can't even enjoy the experience anymore. But before I finish off, I actually wanted to demonstrate a little bit about what I'm talking about here, because I said, well, dump the registers. What happens if we dump the registers, but we do need to replace them with something? And what I talked about was using expression and emotion to color the sound. So I'm going to give you a bit of a demonstration. I'm going to do it on this note here. So if I'm saying, I'm just going to use the word yeah, for example. If I have it and it's in the first verse of a song and the feeling is this kind of soft, reflective, almost sad feeling, I'm going to be delivering this in a very certain way. So if I let that color the way that I do that note, yeah, it's quite fragile. Yeah. If, however, I'm doing this in this big bridge of a pop song and I'm really angry and I want to shout it from the rooftops to this person that's betrayed me, yeah, is going to be very different. And I probably blew the mic, but I'm hoping that you get the impression. If it's in the chorus and I'm in a lot of pain and I really want that pain to come across, but I'm declaring that I'm in pain, I want people to know about it. be something like that. So it's the same note in 3 completely different qualities. And what I did was took the emotion and let that color the note. What would come out if that was the driving force? And what's really interesting is then you don't have these problems with heaviness and breathiness that is a problem. In the first one, I actually had breathiness as a feature. It became more of this texture rather than, oh no, everything needs to be clean. It got to be this beautiful texture that gave it some life. It brought it to life. So it allows us to kind of find the bucket, find the appropriate bucket out of this whole spectrum of colors. And then what I tend to do with students is tinker around with how can we make that a little bit more efficient? How can we ensure that this is just the easiest way that this can flow out of you and you can build trust with your voice? But what I find interesting is if we go in this like back door or this trap door first, it happens so much quicker and you're not up here wondering if you've got it right, if you're doing the right thing that a singer should be doing in this binary of chest voice and head voice or even mixed voice. So I hope that this landed with you. Please, if you've got any questions, any reflections, I would love to hear them below. Leave me a comment. And if you would like to find out more about just some of these more organic ways of translating what you've heard about technique, what you've probably watched tons of YouTube videos on about vocal technique into something that is a little bit more simple, a little bit more human, that might be able to save you a boatload of time and frustration, I hope that you will join me this weekend for the class or grab the recording once it is available. Have an incredible week.